Alright, here's how to configure Deluge's settings for maximum speed and privacy. Just keep in mind that this won't magically boost your speed if your internet is slow or the torrent has no seeders. That being said, inside the Preferences window, you'll find 10 sections that control how the client looks, works, and performs. They cover everything from UI behavior to download speed to network settings and encryption. Let's go through each section and understand what each does and which ones may affect your speed and privacy. First up is the interface section. Here you'll see 6 groups: application mode, main window, system tray, theme, updates, and language. Most of these control the appearance and how the app behaves, not performance, but it's still worth understanding them. For application mode, this determines how Deluge runs. Standalone means Deluge runs as a full local application. This is what you want for normal use. Thin client is used when connecting to a remote Deluge server. You control Deluge remotely from your PC, but the downloading happens elsewhere. For local downloads, Standalone is what you need. Leave it as is. Next, under main window, you'll see several options. First is show session speed in title bar. This is optional and just displays your current download/upload speeds in your Windows title bar. Below that, you'll find focus window when adding torrent. This is enabled by default and keeps Deluge visible when you add new torrents. Detect torrent URLs from clipboard is a handy feature that picks up magnet links automatically when you copy them. Show session speed in title bar is optional and has no performance impact, is purely visual, and doesn't affect speed. Then, under system tray, you have enable system tray icon, which is useful if you want Deluge running in the background. Minimize to tray on close is good for keeping it open without cluttering the taskbar. Start in tray is optional, but helpful if you prefer a silent startup. Password protect system tray adds a layer of security, especially on shared PCs. After that, in the theme section, you can enable Prefer Dark. This is a purely visual setting, but I like dark mode. It's easier on the eyes, so I usually go with it. Next up, the Updates section has notify about new releases. It's recommended to keep this on so you don't miss improvements or fixes. Finally, the Language section has System Default. There's no need to change this unless you prefer another language. Now moving into the Download settings, this section is divided into 3 parts: Download folders, Add torrent options, and Add torrents dialog. Most of these are about organizing your files, but a couple of them can also affect performance. Let's break it down. Under Download folders, you have Download to. This is where your torrents will be saved. Choose a fast drive if you can. An SSD is ideal. You'll notice much quicker loading and processing times compared to regular hard drives, which makes a big difference when handling large files. Move completed to is optional and lets you automatically move finished downloads to a different folder to keep things tidy. Next up, copy of .torrent files to is handy if you like keeping backups of your .torrent files. Otherwise, just leave it off. And then there's delete copy on remove, which only works if you use the backup option above. It cleans up the extra files when you remove a torrent. For add torrent options, there's prioritize first and last pieces. Turn this on if you plan to preview videos or media while they're still downloading. It makes the beginning and end of the file arrive first. If you're not planning to preview or stream mid-download, you can leave it off. It doesn't affect download speed. Sequential download forces the torrent to download in order, piece by piece. Useful for watching videos as they come in, kind of like streaming. However, it puts more strain on the swarm and usually slows things down. Best to leave it off unless you really need to watch as it downloads. Add torrents in paused state is helpful if you like to double check or tweak settings before the download kicks off. It's especially useful if you queue up a bunch of torrents and don't want them all starting at once. Pre-allocate disk space reserves the full file size on your disk from the start, which can prevent fragmentation, especially on older or slower hard drives. It might delay the initial start, but it helps performance over time. It's recommended if you're using an HDD, less important for SSDs. For add torrents dialog, you have always show. Keep this on as it lets you double check details before a torrent starts. Bring the dialog to focus makes the window pop up when adding a torrent. Nothing critical, but helpful. Next up is the bandwidth section. This is where you control how much of your internet Deluge is allowed to use. It's split into 2 parts: global bandwidth limits and per torrent bandwidth limits. This section matters if you want good speeds without overloading your system or clogging your network. Under connections, this sets the total number of peers Deluge can connect to across all torrents. Too few connections mean slower downloads due to limited peer access, but on the flip side, too many can overload your router, especially if it's older or budget grade. A solid middle ground is 200 connections for most home setups. You can raise it to 300 to 500 if you've got a reliable router and stable internet, or dial it back to 100 to 150 if you notice lag, slow browsing, or frequent disconnects. For upload slots, this controls how many people can download from you at the same time. Think of this like opening upload lanes. 4 to 6 is usually enough. You can bump it higher like 8 or more if you want to be generous with seating, or lower it if you're on limited bandwidth or want to conserve resources. Download speed sets the max speed Deluge can use when downloading. -1 means it's completely uncapped, so basically no limit on your speed. For most users, that's ideal, but if you're sharing internet or streaming at the same time, you can cap it to 3,000 to 5,000 kilobytes per second to avoid congestion. Upload speed follows the same idea as above, but for uploading to others, it's also -1 for unlimited. If your upload pipe is narrow, like if you're on some older or rural internet connections where your upload speed is way slower than your download, then capping this to something like 100 to 300 kilobytes per second can actually speed up your downloads by keeping your line balanced. If you're seeding large torrents and don't mind sharing, feel free to go higher. Half-open connections controls how many new connections Deluge tries to open at the same time. Think of it like how many doors Deluge is trying to knock on simultaneously to find new peers. 20 is a safe and stable default for most home setups. It's enough to find peers quickly without overwhelming your network. Only tweak this if you're hitting connection issues or want to experiment with peer discovery speed. On unstable networks, lowering it to 10 to 15 might help. Connection attempts per second determines how fast Deluge tries to reconnect to failed peers. 20 is fine, aggressive enough without being noisy. Going too high can make your firewall or ISP suspicious. Lower it slightly if your system seems strained or throttled. Moving on to the next option, ignore limits on local network. Let's Deluge ignore bandwidth caps when connecting to other devices in your own home. Always keep this checked. It speeds up LAN-based sharing or seeding. Rate limit IP overhead. Also leave this checked. It helps make your download and upload limits more accurate by factoring in protocol overhead. Basically, it helps Deluge play nice with your actual bandwidth usage. Per torrent bandwidth limits are optional overrides for specific torrents. If left at -1, they'll follow your global limits from above, which works fine for most users. You can always limit or prioritize individual torrents manually later if needed, helpful for multitasking large versus small downloads. Now in the Queue tab, there are 4 parts to cover. These are new torrents, active torrents, seeding rotation, and share ratio reached. Most of these control how many torrents run at the same time and when seeding should stop. Let's walk through each. Under new torrents, you have queue to top. When enabled, new torrents start downloading right away instead of waiting their turn. This is great if you want to prioritize fresh downloads. For active torrents, there's total, which sets the max number of torrents allowed to run, downloading or seeding combined. 8 works well for most people, but feel free to go higher if you've got the bandwidth. Downloading determines how many torrents can download at once. 3 is a good balance. Too many can slow everything down. Seeding controls the number of torrents allowed to upload at the same time. 5 is usually enough unless you're a heavy seeder. Ignore slow torrents skips ones that aren't really moving, which is useful to avoid wasting active slots on stalled downloads. Prefer seeding torrents gives upload jobs higher priority than downloads, which is good if you want to give back to the swarm, but it may slow down your own downloads. The seeding rotation section decides when Deluge will automatically stop seeding a torrent. It's helpful for managing bandwidth, disk space, or meeting tracker requirements. For share ratio, the default is 2, meaning Deluge stops seeding after you've uploaded twice the amount you downloaded. This is a fair balance for public torrents. You can lower it to 1 if you're short on bandwidth, or raise it to 3 or more if you're seeding on private trackers that reward higher ratios. Time ratio has a default of 7, meaning Deluge stops seeding after you've seeded for 7 times longer than it took to download. This helps if the ratio isn't met, but you still want to cut off at some point. Lower this to 3 for short bursts of seeding, or raise it to 10 or more if you leave torrents seeding overnight or longer. Time is a hard time limit set in minutes. The default is 180 minutes or 3 hours. You can set this much higher, like 1440 for 1 day, or even 4320 for 3 days. This is useful for private trackers that require a minimum seeding time regardless of ratio. Below that, you'll see the share ratio reached section. This controls what happens when when a torrent hits your target ratio. You can set it to either pause torrent, which is selected in the image, or remove torrent. Pausing is usually safer since it keeps the files but stops using bandwidth, while remove would delete the torrent from your list, but not necessarily the files themselves. Deluge will stop seeding when any one of these conditions is met. Adjust them based on how long you want to share, how strict your tracker is, or how much upload bandwidth you're willing to use. Next up is network, where connection settings and speed really come into play. Here are 4 main parts: ports, encryption, interfaces, and network extras. This section has a real impact on both speed and connectivity, so a few of these settings are worth tuning. For incoming port, this is the port Deluge listens on for incoming connections from other peers. By default, it's set to random, which means Deluge picks a port from the recommended safe range, usually between 49 and 65,000. That's fine for most users and works out of the box. If you want to improve seeding performance or make your connection more stable, it's better to use a fixed port. To do that, uncheck random and enter a specific port manually. Then click the Test Active Port button to see if it's accessible from outside your network. In my case, I'll leave it as random. When I test it, the port is closed, so Deluge shows a warning. This mostly affects uploading because other users can't initiate connections to you. Don't worry though, downloads still work fine since your client can reach out to others. On public torrents, you probably won't notice a big difference, but seeding might be slower or inconsistent. If you want to open the port, you'll need to configure port forwarding on your router. Every router has a different setup, so the best way is to search port forwarding along with your router model. You may also need to allow the port in your system firewall or check that your antivirus isn't blocking it. For now, I'll leave it as is, since this is just a basic setup walkthrough, and networking varies from person to person. Moving on to outgoing ports. These are used when Deluge connects out to other peers. You can safely leave this on random. There's no need to touch it unless you're troubleshooting very specific issues. For encryption, this helps protect your torrent traffic from ISP throttling or shaping. Some internet providers will intentionally slow down torrent traffic when they detect it, but encryption helps disguise your torrenting activity so they can't easily identify and limit it. For both incoming and outgoing, set them to enabled. For the encryption level, leave it on either to stay compatible with more peers. Under interfaces, these control which network adapter Deluge binds to. If you don't know what this means, skip it. Just leave both incoming and outgoing blank. It's only needed if you have multiple network interfaces and want to limit Deluge to one of them. For network extras, UPnP and NatPMP let Deluge try to open ports automatically on your router. Leave these on unless you've already configured manual port forwarding. Peer exchange lets Deluge discover new peers through other peers you're already connected to, almost like your existing peers introducing you to their friends. This is super helpful for finding more download sources, so definitely keep it on. DHT is another way to find peers without relying on trackers. Think of it as a giant peer finding network that works even if the main tracker goes down, which happens pretty often with public torrents. It's a nice backup system that keeps your downloads moving. LSD is for local peer discovery. It helps you find other Deluge users on your home network. This is really useful if multiple people in your house are downloading the same content because you can share pieces directly over your local network, which is way faster than downloading from the internet. Even if you don't think you need it, it's completely harmless to leave on. All of these boost your ability to find and connect with peers, so it's best to leave them on. Then there's peer TOS byte that changes the priority of torrent traffic at the packet level, which is basically how your computer tells your router which internet traffic should get priority. Leave this at 0 unless you specifically know how to use it. It's really advanced networking stuff that doesn't impact most users and could actually cause problems if set incorrectly. Now let's look at the proxy tab. This section only matters if you want Deluge to route traffic through a proxy for added privacy or anonymity. If you're not using one, feel free to skip this tab entirely. For proxy type, by default, this is set to none, meaning no proxy is used. If your VPN or privacy service supports it, choose SOCKS 5 or SOCKS 5 with authentication. These are the most secure and compatible for torrenting. HTTP and HTTP with authentication are less common and not really ideal for torrenting. They're designed more for regular web browsing, so they don't handle peer-to-peer traffic as efficiently as SOCKS 5, and they might be more easily detected by your ISP. I2P is available as an option too, but it's an advanced network network for anonymous routing. Only use it if you know what you're doing. The force proxy use option means exactly what it sounds like, enabling. This ensures Deluge won't connect at all if your proxy isn't working properly. It's basically a kill switch for your torrent activity. Turn this on if privacy is a top priority and you want to avoid any accidental leaks that might happen if your proxy suddenly disconnects or fails. Hide client identity makes your Deluge client less identifiable to trackers. It may slightly reduce compatibility with some peers, so it's optional. Use it only if you're aiming for extra stealth. Next up is cache. This one helps with disk performance and stability. There are two main settings and a readout panel at the bottom. This section deals with disk caching, which helps smooth out performance, especially on older systems or mechanical hard drives. Cache size controls how much downloaded data Deluge stores in memory before it writes it to your hard drive. Think of it like a temporary holding area. Deluge grabs parts of the torrent and keeps them in RAM to avoid writing to disk too often. This helps downloads run smoother and reduces wear on your drive, especially if you're using a regular hard drive. By default, it's set to 512 blocks, which equals 8 megabytes. If you have enough RAM, you can raise it to 2048 for 32 megabytes, or even 4096 for 64 megabytes. This is especially helpful for older systems or when downloading large files. If you're using a solid-state drive, you can leave it as is. SSDs handle frequent writing better and don't benefit much from a larger cache. Cache expiry, in seconds, controls how long cache data sits in memory before it gets flushed to the disk. The default is 60 seconds, which is good for most cases. You can raise it a bit if you want a delay, writes longer for smoother buffering, or lower it if you're dealing with power loss concerns or prefer more frequent flushes. This is mostly relevant for high throughput setups or when running unlimited hardware. The status panel section just shows real-time read-write stats for the cache. There's nothing to change here. It's useful if you want to see how your settings are performing in action. Next, let's take a look at the other tab for a few leftover settings that don't fit anywhere else. Here are three smaller sections: system information, GeoIP database, and magnet links. None of these boost speed or performance, but one of them can improve convenience. Let's break them down. For system information, this setting sends basic, anonymous info about your setup to the Deluge developers. It's meant to help improve the app over time. If you're privacy conscious, just leave it turned off. Turning it off won't impact how Deluge runs. The GeoIP database is what Deluge uses to show where your peers are connecting from on the globe. It's only relevant if you're trying to understand peer locations or troubleshoot connection paths. Most users don't need to touch this, just leave it alone. Magnet links is actually helpful. Click the button that says Associate with Deluge so that magnet links from torrent websites open in Deluge automatically. No need to copy and paste anything manually. It just makes the process smoother. Next up is Daemon, which is only useful if you're running Deluge in the background as a service or managing it remotely. Here are three sections: port, connections, and accounts. This tab only matters if you're running Deluge in the background without the full interface, like on a server or NAS box. If you're just using Deluge normally on your own computer, you can skip this tab completely. But let me quickly explain what it's for, just in case. Daemon port sets which port Deluge listens to for remote control. You only need to care about this if you're planning to manage Deluge from another machine. Otherwise, no need to change it. Allow remote connections lets other devices on your network, or even the internet, connect to your Deluge. Leave this off unless you know what you're doing. Turning it on without proper setup could open you up to security risks. Check for new releases option should be kept turned on so you get updates, bug fixes, and new features when they're available. It doesn't hurt performance and helps you stay current. The accounts section shows the admin account Deluge uses for local control. If you're setting up remote access or managing Deluge on another device, you'd add accounts here. But again, if you're only using it on one machine, you can ignore this. That's all for the Daemon tab. Next up is the final one, plugins, where you can unlock some of Deluge's most useful features. Here, you'll see a list of extra features you can turn on. Plugins extend what Deluge can do, but most aren't needed for speed. Still, a few of them can improve how you use the app day to day. Let's run through the useful ones real quick. AutoAdd automatically adds torrent files from a folder you choose. It's perfect if you use RSS feeds or save torrents manually to a watch folder. Another useful plugin is Blocklist, which lets you block known bad or suspicious IP addresses. It helps with privacy when using public trackers. You'll need to paste in a Blocklist URL file to use it. Easy to find online. Then there's Extractor, which automatically unpacks files like zip or rar after download. This is helpful if you download a lot of compressed content. Otherwise, you can skip it. If you're more organized, the Label plugin adds tag-style labels to torrents for better sorting. It's useful if you keep a big library or run automation scripts. For those who like to stay informed, notifications shows pop-ups when downloads finish or errors happen. It doesn't affect performance. It's purely cosmetic. The Scheduler plugin is really handy as it lets you set time-based speed limits. This is great if you share internet at home or want to avoid peak hour usage. For the data lovers, Stats adds detailed graphs and transfer stats, just for insight, nothing performance related. Toggle is pretty convenient as it gives you a toolbar switch to enable or disable plugins. This is handy if you experiment a lot with plugin settings. And if you want remote access, WebUI lets you manage Deluge through a browser window. It's perfect if you run Deluge on another computer or want mobile access. At the bottom, you'll also see the install button, which you'll need to click after selecting any of the plugins I just mentioned to actually activate them. It's also used for manually adding external plugins that don't come with Deluge by default. And there's the Find More button, which opens a list of community-made plugins you can try beyond the standard ones we've covered. If you found this guide helpful, please hit the like button and subscribe for more. See you in the next video.